Hey guys, welcome back to CAPTAINCY FPL. It's Fran here and back with my Gameweek 12 team selection. But just a little bit of an overview of my Gameweek 11 review. Very small rank change, just had a 3k rank increase from 69k to 66k. Pretty much a safety score this week. No red arrow, fortunately. Of course, very happy to have the Newcastle clean sheet. Not very happy about the bench points, but I don't really have any regrets. It was United versus Newcastle, and I didn't really expect Fabian Schär to do well, particularly when I already had two Newcastle defenders, especially since the last few weeks have gone very poorly for Newcastle defense. Andreas, of course, I didn't really necessarily expect him to do better than Zaha, Maddison, Martinez, Trossard. These are all players who had decent fixtures. Maybe when you look back at the Trossard picture, of course, that was a bit tough. Maybe I jumped the gun, obviously, and that's the reality, right? I jumped the gun to go for these Brighton players such as Webster and Trossard in the last 2 weeks, and in reality, the only fixture to really consider Brighton on is Gameweek 12 versus Nottingham Forest. But of course, we were, I think, also indulged by that Liverpool game where they were able to quite consistently score 3. And I was also quite impressed with their defensive performance overall versus a rather resolute Tottenham side as of late. So I'm not too unhappy about the transfers. I suppose just a little bit feeling of regret with Saka doing so well as of late. Haaland obviously had a captaincy blank. We talked about Kane and how Kane is a little bit more of the maverick move. Kane obviously worked out tremendously well. And I'm super happy, of course, with Dominic Solanke, who's continued to do extremely well. I talked about how Dominic Solanke was someone who scored 2 goals for Fulham last season. Not that that really matters, but it also, combined with Fulham being the worst defense on the underlying stats basis this season, just seemed like a fantastic opportunity to actually own Solanke, just like Mitrovic was a great ownership or player to own, really, versus Bournemouth themselves. I'm very happy that Solanke has done well. He's a lot cheaper than Mitrovic, and I might still think about going back to Mitrovic later, but there's also the avenue of Tony and also Jesus to think about if he's not able to get that suspension. So with Kane, I think the main issue here with him being so consistent is what to do with him in Game Week 12. A lot of people are going to be thinking about, and especially people who've been holding 2 free transfers, are going to go from Kane to Salah just so that they have a better captaincy option versus West Ham. But I think I actually have a slightly better transfer plan in mind, and I'll show you guys that in my Game Week 12 team selection. So with the defense for Game Week 12 is actually pretty stock standard. I'm playing everyone from my bench that I can possibly play. I'm playing Neco Williams. He did actually start in the previous match, so that was a little bit more of a positive, but I think the negative is, of course, the very quick turnaround of this game week. You have Aurier probably ready to start the next game, and I don't think Neco Williams necessarily had a very poor game, but still, nothing really overwhelmingly good from Nottingham Forest that we've seen so far versus Wolves. We did see them miss a penalty as well. They were actually still relatively decent. I think the Wolves game was actually quite close, but nothing particular, of course, and nothing really to stand out with Neco Williams. He just seems to be at least someone who at least is playing this week, and in a kind of sea of FPL fixtures and also issues such as Reece James being out for 8 weeks, Trent, who actually was able to play within the last 10 to 15 minutes of the Man City game. I think a lot of people have been dealing with injury issues, and I'm quite happy at least I have Neco Williams, who could play, at the very best 32 minutes, and I don't really expect anything from him. I actually have 2 Brighton players that I would much rather have the points over him, so if he gets 1 point, I'm fine with that, and if he gets -1 points because Trossard gets a hat-trick, so be it. As far as the triple Newcastle defense, this is exactly what we planned for with the original wildcard in Game Week 8. We wanted to have triple Newcastle defense versus Everton. It was a huge gamble for me, and obviously hasn't paid off. Arguably, if I play triple Newcastle defense this week, it might have done. Newcastle hasn't necessarily done so well within the easier fixtures. We also saw them slip the clean sheet versus Bournemouth. I'm just hoping this is a better opportunity here to keep the clean sheet versus a relatively uncreative Everton side. Obviously, Everton have been very hard-working. They've also been very good in defense, and they still looked quite good, and their opportunities to break the Tottenham clean sheet were actually there. So it is a bit concerning, of course, to own triple Newcastle defense. I do think my future transfer will be to go out of Schär into potentially someone else within Arsenal and City. I do think Ben White is an interesting transfer. The one thing about Ben White is he doesn't really get bonus points, even though he's an Arsenal player. And unless he gets assists, that's the really only opportunity he gets to get these bonus points, because he is an early sub in many games, even though he is almost a confirmed starter for this Arsenal team. So Schär is one to look out as a transfer out in the future. Moving into the midfield, this is where we've made the transfer this week. 4.6 million in the bank. Finally have the opportunity to actually spend it. Maddison out, Salah in, and Salah captaincy with a vice captaincy over Trossard. I think this is a fantastic differential midfield that a lot of people don't have access to this week, specifically people who actually also own Kane. So I think the crucial thing here is I will be keeping Kane in this structure and also going to Salah. I saw enough in this Man City game, a little bit of selfishness from Salah, which actually I was very against. I thought he had 2 easy opportunities to actually lay it off to Diogo Jota and actually create opportunities with Liverpool to actually have a considerable lead in that City game. I thought, once again, as I said early out in the Game Week 11 review, the first time I saw this season where City were actually clearly the second best team, I thought Liverpool had so many better opportunities to score, and really I thought Salah was actually crucial in many of these chances where he could have either got an assist or a goal. Obviously, he did end up getting a fantastic goal when he actually turned out João Cancelo. But yeah, I do think Salah, when he hits this West Ham, Nottingham Forest fixture run, is just going to be beautiful to own. And he could even be a great captaincy option against Haaland. And even still, I think vice captaining Salah is totally fine. Pure ownership of Salah is around 7% around my rank tier. So I'm not really, I would say, in a position where I have to worry about the Salah captaincy. I can still continue to play Haaland captain, play it rather safe from that aspect, and then still have a great differential in Salah, because a lot of people will either be going in two strands in FPL. They'll either be saving a transfer this week, or they already have a transfer saved, and they'll be going into Saka and Foden in Game Week 13/14, or they're going into a path where they're probably going for Salah plus one of Foden or Saka. And for me, I actually just think Kane is such a consistent option. I think he's very good when it comes to pairing against Foden and Saka. The same thing with Salah in this specific fixture run. And it's a very, very short window where we get to own Salah in a 3-million structure. So I think it still works out. I think the points, because the Liverpool fixtures are so good, are still worthwhile. I'm seeing great opportunities for Salah to actually get penalties and things like that. So quite happy to own him. The obvious issue is going to be what to do with some of the poor fixtures going ahead. Newcastle will have to play Tottenham. Brighton will have to play Man City and Chelsea. So those are opportunities where I have to look for specifically budget players to move out of Trossard or to move out of Webster. And we have some options within the United team, as an example. We also have some options in cheaper players within the Arsenal defense. As far as Andreas and Zaha, these are players that I'm going to be playing for the rest of the foreseeable future. Andreas will probably also fill in some gaps where I have rather tough fixtures for my Brighton players or even my Newcastle fixtures, because we've seen recently that Andreas has stepped it up from open play. He also still is on penalties. We haven't seen Willian take that away from him as of late, so that's a huge bonus to Andreas and his opportunity to actually start for my team in the future. So I'm quite happy that Andreas is still, I think, trending well. Trossard, of course, this is all or nothing really with him this week. I've taken him 2 weeks back. He's really returned nothing, and I'm just hoping that he can do something versus this very, very poor Nottingham Forest team. And ultimately, he's going to be a transfer out after this, or potentially the week after if I can find a defensive transfer in place of Trossard. But this is exactly the fixture you want to have a differential over. And I think if you don't have the option to go for someone like a Salah this week, Trossard could be a great captaincy option, because these are one of these game weeks where, because the ceiling is so low, a lot of people will actually have 4 to 5 players missing, not including the fact that they just have City and Arsenal players that are suspended, but also people who haven't been able to deal with the Fofana injury, the Reece James injury, and so on and so forth. So this is a great opportunity, as I said, to pick a differential captain. Since I have Salah, I still think he's a fantastic differential captain. But if you have Trossard as an option, especially as a downgrade from Maddison, I do think you should heavily consider that as an FPL manager. Zaha is someone who obviously has been trolling us ever since we brought him in from the wild card, but I still can't say no to his fixture run. I think Crystal Palace, I'm hoping, will do better in the future, and ultimately he's still a keep for me because the fixtures are still very good. And to round out the team, we've got Solanke and Kane. Solanke is someone who I actually brought in 2 weeks ago, so contrary to someone like Trossard, who's blanked 2 weeks in a row, Solanke has actually absolutely killed it and smashed it in the last 2 weeks. He's done tremendously well, getting a 2-assist game versus Leicester, and then also getting a 1-goal, 1-assist game with triple bonus points versus Fulham. And this is exactly why we brought him in, right? We saw those green fixtures, we saw the opportunity to bring in someone like Solanke, who's a lot cheaper, who actually gives us a little bit of a differential when it comes to whether I actually choose to spend my money. And now that I have, I'm really happy I've made sure that Solanke was that kind of budget downgrade option in the forward position, because we talked about how he could be a bench option in the future, especially when he has these tougher fixtures such as West Ham. But with the kind of form he's in, yes, of course, he's definitely overshot his expectations, because Bournemouth aren't actually consistently creating expected goals and expected goal involvements that Solanke is actually playing a part of. But I think he's actually passing the eye test. I think if you look at the goal versus Fulham, if you look at how well he's actually in and how much of a talisman really he is, it comes down to that. And I think he's just at a fantastic price. So because they no longer have to play Arsenal and City and even Liverpool for the near future, I'm very happy to own Solanke, and I'm probably not going to touch him as a transfer for the future. Maybe I'll actually downgrade from Kane, maybe I'll downgrade from Salah, but for now, I'm actually pretty happy under the 3-million structure, and I'm very, very excited for Game Week 12, because I think this is a huge opportunity for me and my team, especially to go for a Salah captaincy, whilst also keeping someone so consistent like Kane. So thank you guys so much for watching this week. I'll see you guys in the next video, and take care.